Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this Thursday morning webinar. I am Chloe Tetro. I'm the coaching lead here with ReadyCare. For this morning, we're going to be looking at which alcoholic drinks are worse and by default, which ones are better for conditions like type 2 diabetes, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, weight gain, and all of the conditions associated with insulin resistance. So we're going to have a quick look at the likes of these shown here. I know it's quite small on your screen at the moment, so if you want to take a quick screenshot on either your phone or take a picture of your screen, it's mostly what we're going to be moving through for this quick presentation this morning. So we're going to be having a look at what is metabolic insulin resistance and how does that relate to wanting to look after things like weight, blood sugars, and the cardiovascular conditions that are associated with insulin resistance. So metabolic insulin resistance, it's a condition where the body cells become less responsive to the hormone insulin, which leads to elevated blood glucose levels. And the condition is a key feature of type 2 diabetes mostly. And it's associated with lots of other health issues like obesity, cardiovascular disease, metabolic syndrome. Insulin resistance can result in the pancreas producing more insulin, which over time will start to lead to pancreatic beta cell dysfunction and eventually type 2 diabetes. So when we're looking at, lifestyle and dietary factors to mitigate that, so some of the management of it can be things like diet and lifestyle. A diet low in refined carbohydrates and sugars, rich in healthy fats, lean proteins, will help to stabilize blood glucose levels. So, us at ReadyCare, we're big on the low carb approach to managing a lot of these conditions. And as well, regular physical activity can enhance insulin sensitivity by increasing glucose. But we're really going to have a look for today at the main categories of alcohols and which ones, if you've, the odd night out once in a while, as we all do, which ones are the better option if you're trying to make an informed decision on how to enjoy your night, enjoy a special event, still have some fun, but while looking after your health in general. So we'll run through the high sugar cocktails, beers, cider, spirits, and have a look at some of the healthier alternatives. So unsurprisingly, I suppose, the high sugar alcoholic beverages, things like cocktails, sweet wines, liqueurs, alcopops, the likes of Wicked, the likes of Smirnoff Ice, they're particularly detrimental for metabolic insulin resistance. So these drinks contain high levels of sugar, which leads to rapid spikes in blood glucose and increased insulin demand. So these cocktails often include really sugary things like mixers, syrups, and things like 7-Up, Coke, the high sugar version of them. The sweet wines then have a higher residual sugar content compared to dry wines. So on the bottle of wine, the different labels that'll indicate whether it's a sweet wine or a dry wine. You're better off going for the dry wines, but we'll chat a bit more about that in a minute. Alcopops then are packaged with both high sugar and their alcohol content's quite high again. So this combination will elevate blood sugar levels quite rapidly. They're usually quite packed with calories and empty calories at that. Now, although we don't have a major focus on calories, they all do accrue up to a point, particularly when there's high insulin levels there. So that will contribute to weight gain. Things like alcopops, particularly in cocktails, will contribute to weight gain the fastest. And these will exacerbate insulin resistance over time and will have you be more likely to have things like pre-diabetes, type 2 diabetes, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and the host of other delicious conditions that go along with those. So onto the other one now, and very popular choice for people, particularly in the summertime. So beers and ciders, including things like craft beers, IPAs, they have a much higher carbohydrate content compared to some of the other alcoholic beverages that we'll touch on in a minute. So particularly beer contains maltose, which is a type of sugar that raises blood glucose levels. So maltose is the sugars naturally present in beers. Ciders then will often have a combination of the alcohols with high sugar fruits which can then have added sugars to them. So the higher carb content in these drinks leads to that increased blood sugar, that insulin spikes, which over time will make these conditions worse. And beers and ciders will negatively impact metabolic health. Think of them as liquid bread, right? They have the hops, they have, you know, the different types of grains, they have the sugars in there. Now, it doesn't mean that having one of these once in a blue moon is going to, you know, instantly make you way more at risk for type 2 diabetes or any of the other metabolic health conditions. But it's good to know that these, even though they can seem like, okay, well, it's a lower percentage than some alcohols, maybe it's the healthier option. The carbohydrate content, if you are conscious of things like weight gain, if you're conscious of things like any of the other conditions, it is worth keeping those in check. And you'll see from the little slide that I put up at the start that I'll put up at the end as well. Some beers per bottle are lower than others. So I'd include stout in this category as well, actually, lads. So beers, ciders, and stouts. The lowest in carbohydrate, that's the most popular available out there, is Coors Light, with in and around 5 grams of carbohydrates per bottle. Now, remember that we're trying to stay in and around under 100 grams per day, which is considered low carb, which helps to remedy a lot of the progression of the conditions I've mentioned. So 5 grams in one bottle of Coors Light is absolutely not the end of the world. It's just about kind of giving you the choices in there on what is a good and less good choice. I won't say bad, but less good choice. So the spirits with high sugar mixers, things like vodka and orange juice, that can seem like a better alternative because hey, it's juice. But actually juices in and of themselves are really, really high in fructose and sugars and hit the liver quite hard. So for those that are looking after things like non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, the sugars will have a combination of fructose and glucose and will impact quite severely. So they're quite high, and even though they are natural sugars, they're still sugars nonetheless. Now, again, if you're having one of these once in a blue moon, don't worry too much about it. If they're your drink of choice every time you're going out and you're having a few of those, they will absolutely drive up the insulin levels. They will absolutely drive up the blood sugar levels, and they're really worth keeping an eye on. And I think often there's a kind of confusion there that if it's juice, that means it's better. Now, better than, you know, the likes of stout, maybe. Better than the likes of a non-sugar mixer, not really. So it's all about putting it in perspective. Now, getting onto the ones that are less of a difficulty. Dry wines, as I've mentioned, have much, much, much lower residual sugars compared to sweet wines. And overall, the carb content from them is actually quite low. It's in and around 2 grams per serving glass. Now, if you said that in my house, they would cackle because they'll say, what's a serving glass? Because I don't know if we're reaching that limit or not in this particular household. But in and around a regular glass of wine is in and around 2 grams of carbohydrates. So if you're looking for alternatives to mitigate the adverse effects of alcohol on insulin levels, this category would be a better alternatives. So spirits with diet mixers, things with 7-Up Free, Coke Zero, gin and what's it called, Slimline Tonic, the non-sugars version of them. And if you're unsure as to whether they're suitable or not, just check the back of the can or the bottle or the packet, because sometimes they don't have it on the bottle themselves, but they might have it on the packet. And on the label aspect of it, it'll give you a rundown of what's in it. And most of the ones that are sugar-free will come up as 0 grams total carbohydrates. So we're not just looking at the sugars, we're looking at the total carbohydrates. So from that list, you have your dry wines, Proseccos, you have things like any of the spirits, with something like fizzy water with a drop of lime is actually quite nice. Or a drop of lemon, any of the diet mixers. Some people like to have things like whiskeys by themselves with a little dash of water or ice. Personally, that would make me do an absolutely terrible face. But, you know, people have their preference. But generally, things like spirits, Proseccos, dry wines are all the better alternative for a night out. And particularly if you're looking after your weight and if you're looking after your blood sugar levels. There are a few different, actually going back to this slide, there's a few different low carb alternative of beers after coming out on the market. There's one that Tesco's launched that is a low carb alternative, and any of the ones that you can buy online that say they're keto, Keto, keto beers or keto IPAs are going to be fine, but they really have to have that labeling to make them be all right on a low carbohydrate diet. Now, the impact of alcohol on fat burning capabilities. Now, I'm just focusing on fat burning for a while. It's not the be all and end all. It's not the altogether goal, but for some people it is. So when you drink alcohol, the body prioritizes metabolizing or breaking down the alcohol over other nutrients, because essentially, let's call it how it is, alcohol is kind of a poison to our body. So the body's trying to look after itself and say, we're just going to break that down for you. And it is going to prioritize doing that over anything else to keep you safe, basically. So the liver will break down the alcohol into acetate, which the body then uses for energy instead of fat. So if you're somebody who's taught your body how to use fat instead of sugars, so if you're on a low carbohydrate diet, your body's going to start using the alcohol as its energy first instead of the fat. And if you're somebody who isn't eating a low carbohydrate diet, it's going to do the same thing as well. So this process slows down fat oxidation, or the burning of fat, as the body prefers to burn alcohol calories instead of fat calories. So if you're somebody that has been looking after your weight and you see you've had a weekend and Monday and Tuesday of the weekend, your body doesn't really seem to be breaking down any more fat, and you're going, jeepers, I've been following the diet to a T. I don't really know what's happening. That's likely what's happening there. Now, the hormonal effects is alcohol consumption can affect hormones related to metabolism, like insulin and cortisol. So cortisol you might recognize as the kind of stress hormone. Elevated insulin levels can inhibit lipolysis, the process by which the fat stores are broken down. And the increased cortisol level then resulted from alcohol consumption can also promote fat storage. So it's doing the total opposite of what you're trying to get it to do. The elevated cortisol levels, which for those of you that have chronic stress, take note of this, high levels of cortisol over time promote fat storage, particularly in the abdominal area. The calorie intake aspect of it, from alcohol is 7 calories per gram, which is very, very, very high. So if now we don't do a huge focus on calories, as I've said, but it's worth keeping in mind that if you're over consuming calories, it is going to impact your weight loss journey. And it may inhibit, so alcohol consumption may inhibit the absorption of particular nutrients that are vital for that metabolic function, things like vitamin B, vitamin C, magnesium, and zinc. And they will play a really, really important role in energy production and fat metabolism. So if you're feeling absolutely zonked, exhausted after, now of course there's the little loss of electrolytes and just a hangover really. But if you're seeing that you're becoming more tired, the more alcohol consumption that you have over a prolonged period of time, it is likely linked to the impaired absorption of nutrients. And then the main one, really, the more kind of back to brass tacks on the experience of what it's like. And I can definitely attest to this, having done a low carbohydrate diet for 8 years. My biggest downfall is always going to be the day after I've had something to drink. And look, mea culpa, none of us on this earth are perfect. But not only, let's say you're out and about and you pass a pizza place and it's 2 o'clock in the morning, your inhibitions are terribly lowered. It's much, much more difficult to make a decision in line with your long-term goals. Now, my loophole for that is fried chicken. So that's what I tend to go for after a night out. But you will find the day after, carbohydrate cravings will be absolutely really, really strong, really, really strong. And make sure that you have foods that you want in the house that are not carbohydrate foods, because the lowered energy, the impaired cognitive function, and the high cravings are a perfect storm for really breaking out of your way of eating. And although it's not the end of the world to do that once in a while, it can just make people feel sometimes, and I hear this a lot from different clients, it can make people feel like they've failed. And oftentimes when people feel like they failed, there's a particular Asher look. We might as well go the whole hog with it. And that cycle can become very, very difficult to fall out of. And one bad day in the week does not define you. But sometimes, how should I put it? The story that we tell ourselves about that can create a definition. What I mean by that is that if you have a bad day of a Sunday after a particular mad night out and you're absolutely craving something and there's nothing else in the house, if you do have that pizza, if you do have whatever, just make sure that you don't let it mean anything about you that it shouldn't do. It's no bearing on anything. Just go, okay, that happened, back to Monday, back to the next meal, back to the next thing, making sure you have foods in the house, and don't allow it to mean, oh, well, that's all done. I tried and I had a bad day and that's it. So just be careful of that cycle where alcohol is concerned. So I'll just pop up the little slide there if you guys want to take a screenshot, or if you want to take a little picture. It's just a very easy to read chart. It's going to give you the lower carbohydrate alternatives on the left in green, and the high carbohydrate choices, I suppose, in red on the right hand side of the page. If I could say it now, we'd be doing great. And where the little numbers are concerned, it's the amount of carbohydrates per serving of that particular drink. So you can see things like brandy, whiskey, vodkas and sodas are 0, 0, 0, 0. Now, it doesn't mean that I'm saying have as much of these as you like, but just from a sugar perspective, you won't be doing too badly at all with those. Now, just remember, it's going to do a slight fat burning process. Your cravings are going to go up, but look, just tie that into your planning and have a good night as you're having it. Hope you guys found that helpful. I'll actually be back with you guys next week, talking about limiting beliefs, and we will see you guys and enjoy your weekend. Bye now.